In what world does a madman have anything to do with a billionaire? How could a man with nothing, no home, no name, no hope, change the destiny of someone who had everything? You're about to find out, because sometimes the person the world mocks as insane is the only one who truly sees. Sit tight and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because this story will change the way you look at mercy and grace forever. The afternoon sun burned over the highway, stretching gold across the polished hood of a silver Bentley. A convoy of black SUVs lined the pump stations of Haven Cross Gas Stop, one of the busiest stations along the international route between the city and the countryside. The sound of cameras, distant chatter, and the low hum of luxury engines filled the air like background music to wealth. James Brown, 35, stood beside his Bentley, his sleeves rolled up, speaking lightly to the fuel attendant. His tone was calm, generous. Even his laughter carried the kind of confidence that made strangers turn twice. He was the type of man success followed easily, or so it seemed. Two other cars pulled in beside him, a sleek Mercedes and a matte black Range Rover. Out stepped Malcolm and Moses, his longtime friends. The three men were inseparable since university days. To outsiders, they looked like brothers in wealth and vision, but inside their bond lived something darker. Jealousy, competition, quiet resentment. They had come from the city that morning, heading to inspect a new real estate site that James was investing in. A deal that, if successful, could double his already enviable fortune. While James spoke to his escorts, Malcolm and Moses excused themselves toward the restroom behind the station, a dim, concrete corner that smelled of detergent and gasoline. As they stood at the urinals, their laughter echoed faintly. "You tightened it well." Malcolm's voice was low but firm. "As tight as it can get," Moses whispered. "By the time he hits the bridge slope, the brakes won't hold." Malcolm smirked. "Perfect. It'll look like an accident. We'll play innocent, mourn a little, take over his shares quietly." "Imagine," Moses said, "the great James Brown gone just like that. We'll finally breathe." They chuckled, unaware that behind the trash bins just beside the wall, a shadow moved. Bent over, clothes torn and stained, a man rummaged through plastic waste, looking for leftover bread or half-eaten sandwiches. His hair was matted, his beard overgrown, his fingers thin but steady. People called him the Madman of Haven Cross. He was no ordinary vagrant, though no one knew that. Beneath the dirt and ragged clothes still flickered a mind that once lectured in world-class universities. But now he spoke to himself, scribbled on pieces of paper, and muttered formulas in the air. Fragments of a genius gone wrong. His name, long forgotten by most, was Professor Leonard Cole. As Malcolm zipped up and washed his hands, the professor froze. His eyes widened as the words sank in. Tightened it, brakes, bridge slope. His breath quickened. The lines connected in his mind like a lightning bolt. They were going to kill someone. He crouched lower, trembling, then slowly peeked toward the restroom door. Outside, the sunlight stung his eyes. There by the Bentley stood James Brown, smiling, tipping the attendant, the man they had planned to kill. Leonard stumbled out from behind the trash bins. His voice cracked. "Wait!" James turned, confused. His security detail instantly stiffened. The ragged man staggered forward, waving his hands, his face streaked with dirt. Are you James Brown?" James blinked, startled. "Excuse me? Are you James Brown?" The man shouted again, louder this time. "Who the hell is this?" James frowned. "Security." Before his words landed, the madman rushed forward, faster than anyone expected, and Nero slapped him. A sharp, heavy sound that echoed through the station. The attendants froze. The security men drew closer, shouting, "Hey!" "Step back." Then, before they could reach him, he slapped him again. "Shut up and listen to me," the man shouted. His eyes were wild but not lost, piercing, intelligent, desperate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman screamed. Phones came out, cameras flashing. James stood frozen, one hand to his cheek, his mind spinning. No one had ever dared touch him like that. Not his employees, not even his enemies. "Who are you?" James finally muttered. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. They will kill you. Your brakes. They tampered with your car. Malcolm, Moses. James's eyes widened. What did you say? The security guards grabbed the man by the arms, dragging him backward. Sir, we're sorry, sir. He's crazy. We've seen him here before. But the madman didn't resist. He shouted as they pulled him away. If you drive that car, you'll never make it to the site. They'll kill you, James. They'll kill you, the crowd murmured. James's hands shook slightly. How did he know his name? How did he know his friends' names? Malcolm and Moses emerged from the restroom, pretending shock. What's going on? Malcolm asked, his face a perfect mask of confusion. James turned sharply. Do you know that man? Who, that lunatic? Never seen him before in my life, Moses said. Let's go, James. Forget him. He's mad, James stared at them. Really stared, for a moment longer than usual. Then quietly he said, Give me a minute. He looked toward his Bentley. The polished chrome gleamed back at him like an unspoken warning. The crowd had mostly dispersed. The security guards pushed the madman toward the station exit. But something inside James, a small whisper of intuition, refused to be silent. He exhaled slowly. You know what, he said to Malcolm. I think I'll ride with one of you to the site. Let the driver take my car later, Malcolm blinked. What? Why? Just call it instinct, James said with a faint smile. Malcolm forced a laugh. All right, no problem. Ride with me. They left the station minutes later, the Bentley parked neatly behind them, and as the convoy disappeared down the highway, the madman, now sitting on the curb, bruised and silent, watched them go, whispering softly, Not today, Leonard. You saved one today. The road to the real estate site wound through a gentle countryside. Vast green fields, scattered cottages, the smell of fresh rain still lingering from the morning. Inside Malcolm's car, the atmosphere was oddly quiet. James sat in the back seat, eyes fixed on the road ahead, his mind replaying the man's words on a loop. They will kill you. Malcolm, Moses. Your brakes. He clenched his jaw. It made no sense. How could a homeless lunatic know his name, let alone his friends? But the slap had done something strange. It shook him awake in a way nothing else ever had. James, you good back there? Malcolm asked casually, glancing at him through the mirror. Yeah, fine, James replied. His tone was calm, but his thoughts were far from it. Behind them, Moses's Range Rover followed closely, the sun reflecting off its windshield. James noticed the distance between the cars. Too close, too controlled. Almost as if they were guarding him, or watching him. The road narrowed ahead, leading toward the Silver Bridge Valley. A long slope with a sharp bend. The kind of stretch where one wrong break could turn a car into twisted metal. James stared through the window and saw his Bentley's reflection fade behind the convoy in the distance. Then his phone rang. His driver. Sir, the man said, his voice shaking. I don't know what happened. The brakes, they... A loud crash thundered through the line. Hello? Hello! James shouted. The call cut. Silence. Malcolm slammed the brakes instinctively, and both cars skidded to a stop. The sound of screeching tires echoed down the valley. They jumped out. A thick smoke plume rose from below the bend. James's Bentley lay upside down, flames licking its underside. The front half was crushed against the guardrail. James froze, his entire body turning cold. The world blurred around him. People screamed, ran. The security escort sprinted toward the wreck. If he'd been in that car, he swallowed hard, gripping the side of Malcolm's car for balance. Jesus, Malcolm whispered, feigning horror. James, I don't even know what. Don't, James said sharply. Not now. Fire trucks arrived minutes later. The scene turned chaotic. Flashing lights, onlookers, sirens. James stepped back, his shirt soaked in sweat. He could still hear the madman's voice echoing. If you drive that car, you'll never make it to the site. Malcolm placed a shaky hand on his shoulder. You should be grateful you didn't take that car, brother. You're lucky. James turned his head slowly, locking eyes with him. Luck? Malcolm smiled faintly. Yeah. Divine luck. But James didn't answer. He looked beyond the smoke, at the sky, at the chaos, at the trembling of his own hands, and whispered to himself, "Who are you, madman?" That night, long after the police reports, in the cleanup, James sat alone in his penthouse. The city lights glittered below, but his mind was darker than ever. He poured himself a drink, staring at the amber liquid swirling in the glass. He pulled out his phone, searched the name that had burned in his mind all day. The Madman of Haven Cross. A few blurry articles appeared. Rumors, old photos, speculation. But one detail caught his eye. Professor Leonard Cole, once a leading figure in behavioral psychology, disappeared after a failed human cognition experiment 5 years ago. James's hand trembled as he scrolled through. The photo was faded, but the eyes were unmistakable. The same man who had slapped him twice and saved his life. And that's when James knew. This wasn't madness. It was something deeper, something deliberate. He leaned back in his chair, whispering into the silence, "Professor, I'm going to find you." The next morning broke quietly over the city, washing glass towers in soft gold. James had not slept. His thoughts chased themselves in circles all night, about the crash, the slap, and that haunted voice shouting his name. By 8 a.m., he was already on the highway again, heading back toward Haven Cross gas stop. His driver, still shaken from the accident, said nothing. The silence between them was thick. When they arrived, the morning crowd was light. Vendors arranged bottled drinks and snacks near the entrance. James stepped out, his dark sunglasses masking the exhaustion in his eyes. The same attendant who had filled his tank yesterday froze when he saw him. "Sir." "Good morning, sir," the man stammered. You came back?" "Yes," James said evenly. "That man who attacked me yesterday, the so-called madman. Do you know him?" The attendant exchanged a nervous look with another worker, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Everyone here knows him. He's not really dangerous, sir. They call him Professor Cole. Used to be a scientist or something." James removed his sunglasses. "A scientist?" "Yes, sir," the man continued, scratching his head. "Long ago, he used to lecture at one of those big international universities. He was working on some project. Something about the human brain, how the mind reacts under extreme emotion, or so they said. Then one day it all went wrong. The experiment failed. He lost his funding, his house, his family. They said he sold everything just to finish his research. Next thing, he disappeared. A year later, he showed up here, walking barefoot, talking to himself. The attendant's voice softened. He sleeps behind the old car wash. Sometimes he helps people fix things. Car radios, phone chargers. He's not violent, sir. Just..." Broken James stared at the ground for a long moment. "Do you know where I can find him now?" The attendant hesitated. "He doesn't stay still, but he always comes around in the evenings to look for leftovers. Maybe 6, sometimes 7. "Good," James said quietly. "If he shows up today, don't chase him away. Call me instead." He gave the man his business card and left without another word. That evening, the sky turned bruised purple over Haven Cross. Streetlights flickered on, one by one. A soft wind blew the smell of diesel and rain through the air. James returned alone, dressed simply in a gray hoodie and jeans. He waited inside his car, parked at a distance, eyes scanning the station. The world had grown quiet again. At exactly 6:45, a thin figure emerged from behind the old car wash. The same ragged man, barefoot, clutching a plastic bag. He walked slowly, muttering under his breath, searching through trash bins for scraps. James stepped out of his car. Leonard noticed him instantly. His eyes narrowed, cautious, curious. "You," he said, "you shouldn't be here." James raised a hand calmly. "Professor Cole, I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk." Leonard frowned, his eyes darting around. "They always say that before they take you away." "No one's taking anyone away," James said softly. "You saved my life yesterday. I need to know why the professor studied him. The clean clothes, the confident posture, the way the world seemed to bend politely around this man." You wouldn't understand, he muttered. People like you never do. Try me, James replied. Leonard's expression hardened. I heard them. Your two friends. In the restroom. They were laughing about it, about how you'd die and how they'd take your company. I thought maybe I was losing my mind again, hearing voices that weren't there. But when I saw you, I knew. I knew it was real, James's breath caught. You knew their names. I remember everything, Leonard said, his voice calm now, almost clinical. Even when the world forgot me, I didn't forget how people think. I studied human behavior for years, James. I know deceit when I see it. Those two men, they don't smile with their eyes, they smile with their envy. For a moment, neither man spoke. The sound of passing cars filled the silence. James finally said, Professor, I want to help you. Whatever happened to you, I can... Leonard raised a hand sharply. Don't pity me. I'm not your charity project. What you can do is listen. You're being hunted by people you trust. You have money, power, everything. But you lack discernment. You think loyalty is love. It isn't. Sometimes it's just hunger. Wearing a smile, James stood there, humbled and speechless. The words cut deeper than he expected. Leonard turned away, pulling his ragged coat tighter. If you want to survive, stop talking to me here. Meet me tomorrow night. There's more you need to see. And don't bring your friends where? James asked. Leonard looked back, his eyes glinting in the dim light. The old factory behind the river bend, 9 p.m. sharp. Then he disappeared into the shadows, leaving James alone by the station, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear, awe, and something else he hadn't felt in years. Uncertainty. As he returned to his car, his phone buzzed. A message from Malcolm. Brother, hope you're okay. Can't stop thinking about that accident. Dinner tomorrow? James stared at the screen for a long, cold second. Then he typed back one simple reply. Sure. Tomorrow night. But in his mind, he was already thinking, tomorrow night, I'll know who's really sitting across the table. The old factory behind the river bend sat half swallowed by fog. Its rusted towers reached toward the night sky like broken fingers. A single flickering bulb near the entrance threw shadows across cracked concrete. James parked a distance away, his headlights cutting briefly through the mist before shutting off. The hum of the engine faded, leaving only the sound of dripping water and the faint whistle of wind through shattered windows. He checked his watch. 8:57 p.m. He was early. When the factory gate creaked open, James instinctively tensed. A silhouette stepped out, thin, hunched, familiar. Professor Leonard Cole approached slowly, his coat dragging against the dirt. You came alone, Leonard said, his voice echoing in the emptiness. I did, James replied. Now tell me why I'm here. The professor gave a dry, humorless smile. Because the truth doesn't survive in daylight. They walked inside. The air smelled of rust and old oil. Faded graffiti covered the walls. Fragments of forgotten lives. Leonard stopped near a makeshift table cluttered with scraps of paper, half-burnt notebooks, and a cracked laptop held together by tape. He pointed to a folder. Everything you need to see is here. James opened it. Inside were photographs, screenshots of emails, fake contracts, bank transfers. Malcolm and Moses's names appeared repeatedly, hidden under shell companies and offshore accounts. This can't be, James muttered, scanning the documents. They've been diverting funds for years. Leonard nodded. And not just stealing, borrowing money in your name, signing fake partnerships. They've built a web around you so tight that if you fall, you'll take the blame for everything. James's jaw tightened. How did you get all this? Leonard smirked faintly. I may look mad, but madness doesn't erase brilliance. You'd be surprised what people say in front of someone they believe is invisible. I watched, listened, and connected dots no one else bothered to see. He stepped closer. You can't confront them yet. If you do, they'll deny it and come for you again. You need to vanish first. Let them think they've won. Vanish? James frowned. You mean disappear? I mean fake your death, Leonard said, his eyes gleaming with conviction. Make them comfortable. Let greed finish the job. Once they expose themselves, you return. Not as James the victim, but James the proof. The words hung in the air, heavy and wild. But the logic was surgical. James stared at the floor, torn between disbelief and clarity. "You really are a professor," he said quietly. Leonard gave a small nod. "A madman with a PhD in human deceit." Silence stretched between them. The factory lights flickered. Finally, James extended his hand. "Then we do it your way." Leonard looked at the outstretched hand, hesitant at first, then clasped it firmly. "Good. But understand this. Once this begins, you can't go back. You'll lose your name, your comfort, maybe even your family for a while." "I've already almost lost my life," James said. "Everything else is negotiable." Leonard studied him, the faintest trace of admiration crossing his weathered face. "Then it's settled. Tomorrow night, your accident happens again. This time, on purpose," James met his gaze. "And when I return?" Leonard's voice dropped to a whisper. "When you return, the world will finally see who the real madmen are." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The river glimmered under moonlight. Two unlikely men, one fallen genius, one betrayed billionaire, shook hands in the dark, sealing a pact that would soon shake the world. The morning sky stretched pale and gray above the skyline. Inside his penthouse, James Brown stood by the window, his reflection cast across the glass. A man who had everything yet stood on the edge of losing it all. Across from him sat Professor Leonard Cole, cleaner now but still carrying the weary sharpness of a man who lived in madness and clarity at once. "You understand what this means," Leonard said quietly. "Once this begins, there's no going back. You'll die publicly. Your name, your life, your comfort, all gone." James nodded slowly. "If it keeps me alive long enough to expose them, it's worth it." Leonard studied him, impressed by the calm in his voice. "Then we'll do it my way. A death so convincing even you will question if you survived it." That evening, the plan unfolded like a shadowed play. Rain fell heavily over the city, washing the streets in streaks of silver. Leonard and a trusted bodyguard, Victor, waited near the old coastal highway, the same stretch where James's Bentley had nearly killed him days earlier. A replacement vehicle, identical to his, was parked by the bend. Inside, James placed his wristwatch, wallet, and a folder of personal documents, items too familiar to mistake. "You'll drive this close to the bend," Leonard instructed. "The fuel tank's been prepped. Once it explodes, they'll have their proof." James exhaled deeply, his breath fogging the glass. "Let's finish this." He drove off into the storm. Thunder cracked overhead as he reached the curve, pulled the door open, and jumped. The car veered violently, crashing through the guardrail. Within seconds, flames erupted, painting the night sky orange. The explosion echoed across the valley. Leonard watched from the shadows, the fire reflecting in his eyes. He tossed James's ID and watched into the inferno, closing the illusion completely. By the time emergency crews arrived, the wreck was unrecognizable. Headlines broke within hours. "Billionaire James Brown dies in fiery car explosion." News anchors spoke with practiced sorrow. Business leaders offered condolences. Stock prices surged. Within the company's boardroom, Malcolm and Moses pretended to grieve. Malcolm dabbed his eyes with a tissue. "We lost a brother," he told reporters. "We'll honor his legacy." But when the cameras stopped rolling, the champagne was opened. "Finally," Malcolm whispered, raising his glass, "to freedom. To empire." They didn't know a hidden micro-camera, installed by Leonard days earlier, watched and recorded every smirk. Miles away, deep in a quiet cabin surrounded by woods, James watched the same footage on a laptop. The firelight flickered against his face, calm but burning with restrained fury. "They took the bait," Leonard said beside him, sipping tea. "Now they'll start moving the stolen money, cleaning accounts, selling assets. Their greed will expose them faster than any investigation ever could." James nodded. "And when it does?" Leonard looked at him, eyes steady. "You'll rise again, not as the man they betrayed, but as the storm they created." Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying the faint smell of rain and smoke. Inside, two men, one resurrected, one reborn, planned the quiet war that would make the world question who the real madman truly was. Weeks passed. The world had moved on from James Brown's death. Obituaries faded from the headlines. His company, once a beacon of innovation, was now under the control of Malcolm and Moses. Two men who smiled like saints and stole like devils. Behind their confident facades, greed had become addiction. They drained accounts, sold assets, and fabricated partnerships, telling investors that James's death had left unfinished deals. Within months, they had converted millions into offshore vaults, and in their arrogance, they left trails. At night in the hidden cabin, James and Professor Leonard Cole watched everything unfold through screens. Surveillance feeds blinked in the dark, boardrooms, offices, secret phone calls. The professor's brilliance turned ordinary technology into a web of truth. Every lie the two men told was recorded, every stolen dollar traced. "They're unraveling," Leonard said one evening, leaning over a map of transactions. "Their empires built on stolen bones. All we have to do is shake the ground." James stared at the screen where Malcolm toasted Moses over another illicit transfer. "They think they've buried me," he murmured. "Let's remind them I'm still breathing." 3 months after his staged death, James's company announced its annual Investors Gala. The first without him. The event was grand, broadcast live from the city's skyline tower. Malcolm and Moses arrived in tailored suits, glowing with self-importance. Cameras followed them, praising their leadership after tragedy. As the speeches began, the lights suddenly dimmed. The large LED screen behind the podium flickered. Static filled the room. Then a familiar face appeared. James Brown. Gasps erupted. The hall fell silent. Malcolm's glass slipped from his hand, shattering. "Good evening," James's voice echoed through the speakers. "If you're seeing this, you must be wondering, is it real? Is it a ghost?" The crowd stared in disbelief as a montage of videos played. Malcolm and Moses counting stolen cash, signing forged contracts, mocking James's death. Every secret, every crime, displayed for the world to see. "This," James said, "is what envy does. It dresses as friendship, smiles in your face, then kills you slowly. But you cannot bury truth." Security officers began closing in on Malcolm and Moses. Cameras captured their stunned faces. Investors whispered, phones buzzed. The story was already going viral. James stepped onto the stage moments later, alive, calm, dressed in black. "You planned my death," he said, his voice steady, "but all you did was make me see clearly." Malcolm tried to speak, but words failed him. Moses dropped to his knees, sobbing. "Professor Leonard Cole," James continued, "the man you called a madman, he saved my life. Today the world knows who he truly is." At the back of the hall, Leonard stood quietly, clean-shaven, wearing a simple gray suit. The crowd parted as he walked toward the stage. Cameras turned to him. The once-forgotten genius who'd lived as a ghost, now reborn in light. James extended his hand. Leonard hesitated, then clasped it, the same handshake they'd shared in the shadows, now witnessed by the world. Later that night, as police led the two traitors away in handcuffs, James and Leonard stood on the rooftop overlooking the city. "Strange," Leonard said softly. "How people must lose everything before they start seeing clearly." James nodded. "You called it discernment. I call it grace." Leonard smiled faintly. "Maybe they're the same thing." The wind brushed past them, carrying the distant sounds of sirens and applause. For the first time in years, Leonard's eyes were clear. No madness, no fear, only peace. "You were right," James said quietly. "The world mocked the wrong man." Leonard chuckled. "Let them. Some of us were never meant to be understood, only remembered." As dawn broke over the horizon, the city stirred to a new day. One where truth had risen from the ashes, and two men once broken by deceit now stood unshaken.